Why didn't I go to academia? Because, because I started writing books for teachers, and there seemed to be a demand for that. There seemed to be a need for books which were written for practitioners, not for researchers or other academics. And so that I got sort of stuck on that route, and it lasted a good 10 years or more of a book after every year, a book.
Yes, you have. You've written, I would say, almost 20 here, according to my calculations. Not to mention articles. But one of the first books you've written was about language, which
Mm-hmm.
is to me a classic, published in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear you speak more accurately about the writing process of that book.
Well,
And what does the writing process look like for you, Scott? Like, what do your writing sessions tend to look like? If we kind of like look back over the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, because I'm sure it's changed. Like, how do you start writing a book? When you sit down, is it an empty page? Is it bits and pieces that you've noted through the week or observations that you then flesh out? What is actually in front of you when you start writing?
It's what's behind you. It's your experience of teacher training. If you've been talking about teaching and teacher training, I did something like 16 deltas with Neil. So the actual talking and the sessions themselves during the course, the preparation of worksheets, etc., and then the discussions with Neil, for example, is that is that huge corpus, if you like, of discourse about teacher education that then you kind of you shape into a chapter of a book. But I mean, About Language was a case in point, because About Language was really a set of worksheets that I produced for the language analysis thread of the Delta course. And it was Ruth Gans, who was the editor of that series at the Time, said to me, "Why don't you put this into a book?" And which is exactly the experience. I'm talking to actually one of the other chapters of a handbook I wrote recently was interviewing other methodology writers like Penny Jeremy Harmer, Jim Scrivener, about the process of and how they got into publishing. They all said exactly the same thing. I was teacher training, and a publisher wanted it one day and said, "Oh, what would you like to write a book for us?" And then so those initial worksheets and things were sort of then turned into books by clever editors. There's no such thing as a blank page because it's all there.
No writer's block then.
Well, no, not really. And it's interesting revisiting these books because at least 3 of them have just been rewritten, second editions, and the third that I'm working on at the moment, a book that I wrote with Herbert Puchter on creative grammar activities, which is, they all come around again. And it's interesting looking at them in the light of time and thinking, yeah, well, actually, I'm glad they've asked me to rewrite this because it wasn't perfect the first time around. No book is, but it's kind of gratifying to be able to correct some of your excess or bring it up to date, basically. So I don't get, no, it's not, I write erratically, let's say, and I write, there's no routine to it. It's not like I'm going to do 10,000 words before breakfast. I'm not Georges Simenon. I don't do it like that. I just kind of, it goes on to, but, and it's quite quick, I have to say. I'm lucky that I'm not lucky in the sense that I don't have a regular teaching timetable. I don't have any timetable at the moment. So I have an unlimited time to write and also to edit other people's books. And the process, it is interesting seeing how different it is to different writers and working with them. But I can't really define my approach any more than that. It's kind of sporadic, but it is this regurgitating some of these conversations that I've had before onto the page.
Was there a book that you started but you didn't finish?
No, but there were books I had ideas for which I couldn't sell to anybody.
Teaching Unplugged was one of them, according to Luke. In the beginning, nobody wanted to publish that book.
Of course not. They ran a mile. I mean, it was Delta Publishing who were infinitely wise in deciding to take it on because they didn't have a course book list, so it didn't threaten anything.
Right.
But other people said, you must be mad. You know, people like Oxford or Cambridge, we're not going to publish a book which is anti-course books. You must be mad. And I had another idea for a book, a course book, actually, because I did write course books. You know.
Yes, I know that. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You wrote one. You wrote one. Pearson, I guess. Was it
No, I wrote more than one. Oh, you haven't
Oh, you
been
wrote
doing
more
your
than one.
research here. Oh, I wrote many more than one. And I wrote bits of other people's course books, actually.
That's right.
How I
I know you-
started
yeah.
writing workbooks and teacher's guides
Okay.
and things like that. But I had a hand at course books. And people say, oh, you're such a hypocrite. You wrote course books and then you wrote teacher. No,
That was
actually,
before, right?
yeah, you learn a lot what's wrong with course books by writing. I mean, I learned, you know, it's like people criticize somebody who's a non-smoker. But you say, but you used to smoke once. Well, yeah, that's why I'm a non-smoker now. Right. Hello. I mean, you know, it doesn't disqualify me from being a non-smoker just because I smoked once. So it doesn't disqualify me from being a critic of course books just because I wrote a few. I learned a lot about them, but I did have this idea of writing a course book, which is rehabilitated grammar translation.
Oh.
So it's to bring grammar translation back, but to dust it off and turn it into a communicative approach, so bring the two things together. I still think that's a great idea, but nobody would touch it.